So I don't know how many of you remember, but Sherri Taylor, I have a vested interest in building better communities, safer communities, more welcoming communities, more harmonious communities, and more engaged communities. And so I am so happy to be back. Last time we were here, we really did some work around identifying the values of this community. And so I posted them up as a representation of the history of the NC, and just to keep that, right? Because while there's a lot of diversity, there's a lot of shared values that this community has and also works very hard for. So thanks for coming out tonight. Hope you got some good food. This is gonna be a really kind of chill kind of thing, hence the flowers and the arrangement. I also want to tell you what we're gonna do so that there's no surprises. So clearly we're gonna have some prepared questions, and then there's gonna be a period of time for open Q&A from the community. We have a lot of different ways for you to participate. You know, you can pull somebody by the side and say, I want to ask this question, and get some support to do that. You could also write up on the Post-its and put it in the questions for Sheng Park. We've decided to call it the park instead of a parking lot because Diamond Park, etc. So without further ado, welcome, brave soul, right? Being in politics is brave these days. I don't know what y'all are like. That's serious business. But so, yeah. So, I met with quite a few of the steering committees to think about how to best sort of begin the conversation. I think that's also important. This is the beginning of a conversation. We hope to have you back many, many times. But the first question echoes a very important value that the community holds. And it's about, you know, people come into politics, right, with the best of intentions. You want to change things, you want to make things better. People have gone through things that help them see disparities and inequities. And politics is politics, right? It requires holding specific tensions. It requires making really tough decisions. And so our first question for the night is like, we're gonna just go hard and heavy from jump, and then we'll smooth it out. But it is really about, you know, how do you plan to hold that tension between the personal values that brought you into, right, the political arena and motivate you, and what we all sort of understand about what happens in politics, right? And the sacrifices, the compromises that are sometimes necessary. So we'll start there. How do you think about holding that tension?
I'm just gonna push my chair back a little so that I can have a better angle so that I can see everybody. Good evening, everybody. My name is Sheng Thao, your newly elected council member for District 4. Thank you so much for having me here. And that's a great question. A little bit about, and I know you know a little bit about my background already, but I'm going to repeat it again because it really is how my core values are structured, right? And so, a daughter of refugees, grew up on a farm out east of Stockton in the unincorporated areas. Grew up very impoverished, right? Went to public schools, a single mom, and left a really bad domestic violence relationship at 6 months. Found myself homeless, enrolled at Merritt College here in Oakland, and I graduated valedictorian, went over to UC Berkeley, co-founded the Bear Pantry, which is a food access program, and then from there did an internship, merely, to be honest, because they were giving out $1,000 for the summer, just so that I can actually feed and clothe my son. And that internship was through APAPA. What the program was to get Asian Americans engaged in local politics, right? So that we can cultivate young leaders, and hopefully one day they'll become be part of politics, right? And so for me, you only know what you know. Growing up, politics wasn't a part of my world in that sense, right? American politics. And then being a single mom and leaving a really bad domestic violence relationship, it was always survival mode. Like, what's the next step? And living from minute to minute, to day, to month, and then now graduating and really understanding, like, you know, I have a job, and I don't need to actually be on survival mode anymore. Really thinking about how can I best use all of these strengths that I have in regards to giving back to the community and shedding light on equity, shedding light on transparency and the marginalized voice, which is where I come from. And so with that being said, I was paired up with Councilmember at large, Rebecca Hamplin, and you know, I'm just a hard worker, right? And so she brought me back and hired me after I graduated, and I worked in her office for 4.5 years, and then running for this seat. So that really shapes, you know, when we talk about how do we really have politicians in place where they're gonna still make decisions according to their values. And when I ran my race, I really ran as the labor union candidate for a reason. And I said that over and over because I'm all about working families and how do we, you know, bring working families to the middle class and how do you sustain that? It's really important to me, and it's at the core of who I am. And so with that being said, the funds that I did take, the donations that I did take was from the neighborhood, from labor union families, and none from developers. I was very cognizant of who I would take donations from. So that's the very beginning of it, right? So that, because I know, I've been in politics for a while, right? And so understanding that sometimes those could be drivers, I wanted to make sure that I entered, and if I did win, and if the people did choose me, that they were choosing somebody who they knew who they were choosing, right? And so I'm very proud and happy that that winning this race meant everything to me in the sense that I won because this is me. Like, you don't get something else, right? Like this is just who I am. I'm very genuine, and I'm just so blessed and honored that you know, the voters of District 4 really saw that in me, because that's what they were, you know, a lot of people told me that. And so at City Hall, that's a whole different arena, right? And so with that being said, you know, I do have a lot of good relationships with city council members, all the city council members. And so that's a key to it as well, understanding who they are. And then before inauguration, I made it a point to really sit down a few times with Councilmember Bass and Councilmember Lauren here before we were even inaugurated, right? And so before we were even council members, just sitting down with them and kind of just learning who we all were and kind of like where we're at. And so all of that really plays out on the city council when we make our decisions. And I think that you have to remember your core values in this position, in a job like this, and really go with what's going to be best for the city as a whole, right? And how do we create a city that allows for everyone to thrive? How do we create a city that allows for, but not only allows for people to thrive, but for our youth to really feel that they can thrive? Because we always talk, we can talk about anything, right? Illegal dumping, crimes, anything in the city. And it's tied back to how are we preparing our children, our youth? Are we investing, right? And it's very timely. I'm wearing red because I'm in support of teachers. It's very timely because this is what it means to support our teachers, is to support our kids, our youth, right? To make sure that we create policies that engage engages everybody, but including our youth as well, and access, right? Accessibility to folks who understand how local government works, because I can tell you that that's all a part of equity. If you don't understand how the laws and policies are being made for you to live by at City Hall, then you don't understand, then you're not gonna know how to fight so that your voice can be heard, right? And so, so with that being said, this is why for me it's so important for myself to be accessible to you all, to all of my constituents. And I always tell people that in my office there's 3 staffers. I currently have 2 staffers. I have a 3rd person onboarding on Monday, and I require them to, you know, email or call back the constituents within 48 hours. Mind you, we only have the 3 staffers, and so we're working on policies and everything else. So if we don't, I always say, you know, we'll circle back with the email within 48 hours if you have to receive a reply back, because we will get to you accordingly, because that's how I see my position, is to make sure that I'm responsive so that we can work together as a partner. That was a long answer.
That was a very robust answer. That was great. So you heard it here first, 48 hours.
Yes, 48 hours. If you haven't heard it within 48 hours, you might want to send another follow-up email.
Right.
You don't have to wait a week to do that. Just, circle back and
Yeah.
we'll get to it.
No, thank you so much. I'm just, from what you're saying, I was just taking a couple notes because that's what I do. The focus on the youth, the importance of, again, engaged citizens knowing how to organize themselves, right? And also knowing how these things work, right? Like you were saying, like understanding how policies come. So in the context of that, all these good relationships, the accountability that you are bringing to D4, now we get to do some visioning, and you shared a bit of it, but if you could just go a little bit deeper, what does a thriving and healthy and safer, right, district and city look like to you? And I might add to that, I was having a brief conversation with someone before we started, where everyone feels they belong.
Right.
That's really important these days.
It really is, and it really does start with making sure that we have services, and we can provide the services that a city should provide. As you all may know, we have, that's a category that we're really lacking in, and so really trying to understand how we can create better systems, and it is a large issue, right? It's a large issue, and so for instance, a good example is our potholes. Right? Everybody is suffering from our potholes. I use that as the universal example because everyone suffers from it, whether you're in the hills or whether you're in East Oakland, West Oakland. It doesn't matter where you're at. We have potholes everywhere. But it's an equity issue as well because we're going off of like who calls the most, who's reporting the most, right? So this means who has the electronic, who has the time, right? When I was a single mom and homeless, I didn't even have time to think about anything else other than like, okay, I gotta go take them to the doctors, and then after that, dinner, right? And so like the pothole thing is not on my top priority. And so then whose potholes are getting paid, billed if we're all on the same page. And so really, when we talk about systems and making sure that we have equitable systems and what have you, this is what it is when it comes to services. We need to make sure that we are looking at the city services through a lens of just not equity, but also a lens of like how do we do things in a more efficient manner, right? And so I'm really happy to announce that Public Works is working to do the hybrid version. We've been complaining for so long now. Before it was illegal dumping. It was, folks would go pick up illegal dumping on a complaint base. Now it's a hybrid version. It's complaint based. It's hotspots. And it's also a revolving, going down, picking up every single, illegal dumping pile that there is throughout the city. And there's a system for it. It's going to start mid next month, right? And so that's exciting news because now, we're being more equitable. It doesn't matter if you're in East Oakland or in the hills or wherever. We know for sure that there's going to be trucks going through picking up illegal dump. And that's just the beginning of, and that was a long fight, many years, just for that simple fix. And so we have a lot of those kinds of fixes at City Hall, and I think that that's where it starts. And so as new council members, the three of us are really looking at how can we really shift the conversation, how can we really, look at our services in a more equitable and more efficient way, right? Because if we're more efficient, we save money. If we save money, those dollars can go somewhere else, like our parks, right? Which we don't invest in money. And so those are some of the kinds of things in regards to public safety. When we talk about public safety, I think that the NCPC's such great space to do such great work. And I think that I've been to many NCPCs. I worked with at-large council members, so I've gone to other NCPCs too. And I think that if we can empower the community and just allow them to educate them to see what they have at the tips of their fingers in regards to NCPC, it's such a powerful, powerful space. I mean, you have me as a representative of City Hall here, and my staff will be here as I'm rotating through NCPCs in the future. And then you have OPD here, right? And then you have city staff here as well, and sometimes city attorney's office may be here. And so just understanding like how as a community can we work together to to really understand what our needs are. And I think this is a perfect example here in Diamond. This is really restorative justice focus, right? And the whole city knows that. I don't know if you know that, right? They do. So they're like, yeah, I was walking one day in City Hall and someone said, you know, restorative justice is like a really great thing. And you know, there's an NCPC that does this. I think they're in the Diamond. And it made my heart smile because I was here for that restorative justice, right, part of it. And so the word is getting around, and so you really can shape it as you see fit for your neighborhood. And I think that that's a part of public safety as well as working with the community, getting to know your police officer, to really know what your values are within, right, the micro version of what our values are within Oakland. And so at a city level too, really making sure that we are talking about, you know, how do we bring more resources in, right? Because when right, and so we have a huge housing crisis, right? And we have a huge unhoused population. So when we do get resources from the state, when we do get resources, and then I'm talking about dollars, when we get dollars from the county, how are those dollars being spent? Like what is the transparency behind all of that, right? Like when, you know, so the city council does get to vote on a certain, once the city wants to spend over a certain dollar amount. However, sometimes, and what I've noticed as a city council member is that those decisions are made ahead of time before even council gets to vote on it. So you know, you're told like, well, we did all this footwork already, so you either vote it up or down. I mean, if you've already invested all the resources in it, you're kind of hitting us with corner to vote yes. And so, like, really understanding that process and not letting us be towards the end, because we are the representatives for our communities, so that we can have that true dialogue, which we currently are not. And so there's a lot of shifting around at City Hall and a lot of changes, and sometimes people don't like change, but you know, that's okay. You know, we will hold hands as we're changing things.
I think what you said is so important, because what I understand as a member of the community, but also having participated in similar events, is that is a piece of what we also wanted to ask about, is how can 22X partner with you to sustain the dialogue?
Yes, for sure.
Like in a real way.
Right.
You know, not in a rotate, I'm good, you know.
Well, no, I hear you. Only
Like
accountable.
a real way.
I hear you. And that's what it's about, right? I can't.
Because we want to partner.
Right. Well, I'm going to tell you this. I don't know if you ever heard this before. I don't know if this is a thing, right? But like for me, I feel like I can't do my job without you all, right? Because I truly want to hear what it is that you need. And in order for me to fight for that, I need your help. And that help may look like you sending in emails. When I said, you know, I'll try to put pressure on my side. And then once, you know, I feel like, okay, the emails should come in, you know, then this is when I call upon you all to send in the emails. We work together to strategize so that we can get to our goals together. I don't have a different set of goals than you all. Like, you tell me what your goals are, then those become my goals. And I can't get to them without your help. So through that partnership, whether it's, you know, what's something that's happening right now. So for an example, right? I know that we have this whole corridor right here. It's all these stores are coming in. It's about to change, what have you. And so if there were to be some sort of community meeting, or just in regards to street paving, right? Because DOT says that they're going to go out and have these community meetings. I would call upon you all and tell you, get together, come up with your top 5 streets that you want to pave. And then I will come to the meeting after you figure that out, and then you will let me know what those top 5 streets are. We can meet and really have a discussion around that, and then I go back and tell DOT and put on my pressure the way that I do it as a council member. And then when he comes out to have a community meeting, we organize to come out so that he hears the same messaging, and then we can hope for maybe 2 of those 5 streets to be paved, right? And so this is the kind of partnership that I'm talking about, and that could be mirrored to every other topic as well. And so I'm really here, and I want to be accessible, and I am, you know. And so what I've also said is that, look, I don't live in the Diamond, I live in the Laurel, right? And so I have done walking tours in people's neighborhood in Montclair to better understand what they're going through. I've done walking tours in Piedmont Pines. I was in Allendale yesterday, and we're going to schedule a walking tour with some of the community members there, and I want to do a walking tour here of your community. So I don't live here. You live here, you have to drive on these streets every day. You tell me what the big issues are, right? So that we can work on them together. Sometimes it takes me, I'm a visual person. So it takes for me to actually see, you know, what's going on in the community. Like, you can draft an email, right? But I can fight for it a little harder if I can see it with my eyes. And so I'm definitely open to that. So that's how you can stay in touch with me. Also, sign up. I have newsletters that go out, e-blasts that go out in regards to different legislations that are coming up. I do care very much about you emailing me about certain policies and legislation. I do count those votes before going into any kind of voting meeting. So that's really important. So if you don't know how to find that information, on the Oakland City website, if you go under City Council meetings, if you click on that, then you have to click on, it'll take you to another site, another page, and then you have to click on meetings, click on that, and then it'll pick the date, right? So then you could pick City Council or whatever committee that you want to look at, and then the agenda will pop up, and you'll see the staff report, read through it, because it may affect you, all right? And so, and if it does, you need to send me an email on whether you support it or you don't support it, right? And so really being vocal and to participate is really, really important. Yeah.
Is email more effective than handwritten?
Yes, please, yes, yes, yes. Email is the best because we get to file it electronically, and then it's just easier to really see like where the support is at. And you know, and when you send an email saying like I support the Oakland teachers, you may get a response saying thank you, received, and that's it. But right, because but we're counting that. It doesn't go into like a black hole, you know, just because it says thank you, received, or we're just trying to reply back so you know it's been received.
Well, we will start to transition into the open Q&A, but I really wanted to appreciate you for running it down in that way of strategy and truth-telling, right? And truth-telling about what we can actually hope for, right? Give you the top 5, you do your thing, we can, you know, hopefully get 2. Like, that's real. Like, and I think that is in the way, like, the fundamental agreement with the community, and I mean, does that sound reasonable?
Just being honest,
it's just
right?
to tell the truth, right, about what's happening. So with that,
can I?
of course you can.
Oh. I just there's a spiel that I do every time I go to, and I start a listening session. I know this is more as a guest to the NCPC, but I just want to give everybody a kind of an update in regards to what's happening at City Hall. So since inauguration, January 7th, I've been placed as the chair of the Rules and Legislation Committee. If you don't know what that is, the Rules and Legislation Committee is a really strong committee. It's usually held by the council president. Our council president, as a city council, voted for Councilmember Rebecca Kaplan to be council president, and usually the council president also holds chairship of the Rules Committee. However, she's deviating from that and sharing power, and so because the Rules Committee is a really powerful committee, and so I chair that committee, and so seeing everything that comes in, and I get to schedule all the legislation and policy items. Along with that, I'm also a member of the Finance Committee. As you may remember from campaigning, that I have experience in the budget process for the past 2 budget cycles. And then also a member of the Public Works Committee, which this is DOT as well, Department of Transportation, so that's our roads and also sewage and all of that. Also a member of the Ed Partnership Committee. I'm really excited for Councilmember Bass to be chairing the Ed Partnership Committee. We have our first committee meeting on Thursday, February 28th, And so this is a true partnership with OUSD and City Council. Previously, for the last couple of years, I think we've only met once, right? And so it's really what you do in regards to as chair of this committee. It meets at the call of the chair, right? And so I think it's ridiculous that we haven't met more times, but I'm a member of that committee as well. We have a little parent caucus, that's myself, Lauren Taylor, and Nikki Fortunato Bass, and we're all on the Ed Partnership Committee. And the OUSD school board members will be there too, so that we can really work together. We are also reviving the City Port Committee as well, and I'm a member of that. It went dormant for a long while, but now it's really timely because the Oakland A's are trying to work their way to Howard Terminal, and so that's going to be a really robust conversation in regards to what the community benefits are. And so I'm excited for that for sure, making sure that we get all of our community benefits into the ballpark and making sure that the A's stay here in Oakland. On top of that, my colleagues have placed me as the person to represent the City of Oakland at the Alameda County Transportation Commission. This is the county-wide transportation commission, and so I get to work with all the other mayors of all the other cities and supervisors as well in Alameda County to really think about where our Measure BV dollars are going to help out in regards to traffic and infrastructure. My goals there at ACTC is the acronym for Ed. My goals there are for safe routes to school. So that's funding, figuring out how do we get those dollars to come back to Oakland is my goal, right? To try to get as much money to come back to Oakland as possible. And so that's kind of some of the fun things that have been happening at City Hall. I co-sponsored the resolution to support our teachers, and I'm very proud of that. And there are other things that are coming through the pipeline to really strengthen some of the finances in Oakland, including policy around leasing out property that the city owns versus selling it, right? And so those are just some of the awesome ideas that are kind of happening at City Hall and as an update.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You're very busy.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's fun. Having fun.
Okay, well, let's hear, so we're gonna do this, since there's no line, it'll be the line of sight, I guess. So how about I start over here?
My question is really to you.
Oh my.
Now,
Yes, sir.
how do you coordinate with other local organizations within the district that you represent, so that whatever vision that we put together really represent us and you and everybody else?
How do I? I'm a community member. I can, well,
No,
I
who
work.
is part of the
Who's the chair?
neighborhood council?
Yes, neighborhood council members, please stand up.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Okay, now my question is, how do you coordinate with other organizations within the district that Sheng represents?
It's a great question because it's really on our mind. It's something we want to do. We've been looking for the contacts of all the other neighborhood councils and wanting to meet them all and running through the bureaucratic hurdles that requires. So any contacts that we receive, we've got Mary here from a neighboring
16Y.
16Y. Anytime we get a contact, we reach out with them to them, and we really do have an interest in having a gathering of all of us together, because as Sheng said, it's a nice opportunity for us to come together, and the city has in mind that we meaning us, all of us, be the information source for what community needs, and that we actually design, that we meet on equal footing with the police and the politicians, and to create our community. So that has not existed yet. So there's no footprint that we can step into. That has not actually existed, but it's the stated goal, and we'd like to see that happen. Any other?
How many neighborhood councils are there within Sheng's territory?
That's a good question. How many, do we have that number on the census? Let me count.
I think there's
1, 2,
5.
3, 4.
There's less than 10.
Yeah, I think there's between 6 and 8.
That's why I felt that map is very important to see what 22 means versus other, with respect to your map, of the district that you represent. And
That
then
helps. B
we would,
22 is from Park Boulevard,
pardon?
to 35th Avenue, the freeway, north to the hills, very similar.
I see.
The 580 to the
And-
13.
And definitely shoot me an email, I'll send you the map of, District 4 and the breakdown on the, different, police beats and the NCPC. I can send you that information. Lou, I just wanna introduce real quick, Luancy Moa is my chief of staff. She's right behind you, and then she can take that information too, if you, or give you the email address. Yeah.
Okay,
All right.
yeah, all right.
Oh, we will go to Mary May.
Since you mentioned being on the education committee, a number of us, and I am in District 5, but very close to this NCPC, have been struggling with a couple of the decisions the school board has proposed making on its budget. One of them is this rigid, crazy library allocation formula. And the other one that I was not aware of until recently is their proposal to balance the budget by totally defunding restorative justice staff in the school district. And we have a nationally recognized restorative, you need the staff. What do you see the education committee of the council being able to do to talk the school board out of some of these wrong-headed ideas?
Right, I can tell you that we have no control over the school board, however, we can work together to kind of find, solutions, right? And so, they'll do what they're gonna do, and we have no say in regards to what they do, but however, that has been brought to my attention along with the API programming that will be cut. The only programming that OUSD even has or ever had, is going to be cut along with restorative justice. And so, the, Asian Pacific Islander, programming, right? We just started that, or OUC just started that programming, I think, the past 6 months. The first of its kind in Oakland, and it's going to be cut along with restorative justice. And so understanding that restorative justice, especially for the youth, right? I mean, it's really helpful for everybody, but especially for our youth, that's really important. And so I have Brandon Barranco on my staff who, before working for me, worked for Assemblymember Tony Thurman, who's now the state superintendent. And so we're really tapping in, and we're working with Councilmember Bass's office, and our office is really trying to tap into like state money and other funding to see what we can do. We cannot ask for OUSD to not cut the programs. It's their prerogative, and we don't have control over that. However, we can try to figure out and talk to our senator and congresswoman and state superintendent of education to really see like maybe there's some state funding somewhere, and you all can do the same too. Yeah.
Okay. I saw that hand, and then we'll go there, and then we'll pop to the back.
Thank you. So I want to ask you a question about the budget that's coming up. And I appreciate what you said about really wanting to hear from us about our priorities and our interests. But the budgeting process is so opaque and so labyrinthine, I think that's a word. So I'm really interested to know what your priorities are as this new budget cycle is coming up, and how you're going to apply your core values and equity to making a budget for the city.
Yeah, for sure. And so, let me just give a breakdown on how the budget process worked at City Hall, and it's very confusing. So what happens is that the mayor will release her budget proposal, and that comes out May 1st, I believe. So when community members or organizations come to me and say, well, we want this in the budget book, I always will go talk to the mayor's office first, because if it ends up in her proposal in that book, that which will then be sent down to city council, then most likely it'll get funded, right? Once the city council receives that proposed budget from the mayor's office, what happens is that all we can do is shift money around, right? So if we're taking from one area, we either are losing those services, or we have to fill it with something, or find new money, which, you know, we can find new money, if we're saying that the finance director didn't know that revenue was coming in from, just say, cannabis, you know, then we can add that money into it. But finding new money is not an actual real thing, right? Because the idea is that the finance director is already projecting the funds, and they've already talked to all the departments, what have you. But maybe they didn't know that ACTC was giving money out, right? And so, with that being said, we're just shifting money, and that becomes problematic, as you can imagine. However, with that being said, once that process happens, it does come to the city council, and then it becomes, what passes at the city council is called the president's budget. The council president can work by herself and develop a budget and then see if she could get 5 votes, or she can call upon 3 others who work with her and then work together and then try to get everybody's needs in that budget and hope for a vote of 5 to get that budget passed. Councilmember Kaplan has chosen to work with other council members. So I'm a part of that group, along with Councilmember Bass and Councilmember Taylor. With that being said, we're gonna be setting our priorities on Monday, so I know it's a convoluted process, but if you wanna tune in to K-Top is a live streaming programming, it's government programming. You can watch it, live stream it, and we're gonna that meeting will start from 12 noon until 5 p.m. on Monday, and it's a budget meeting. We always have a pre-budget meeting to talk about what our goals are in regards to the budget, so that we can hear each other in public, because we can only work with so many, right? Only 4 councilors can work together at any given time, and really hear that and then devise that budget. For me, here in District 4, vegetation management and wildfire is a priority of mine, just because if there's a fire here in the city of Oakland, whether it's a wildfire or whether it's a house fire with embers flying everywhere, the whole city, it would be an economic downfall, right? And so that's not good for the city. And I don't know if you know, but we don't have any more of the special funds, the WPAP funding for vegetation management. And so that's gonna be my #1 priority in regards to District 4 to fight for funds for that. Also homeless and housing, right? And I know that that's gonna overlap with a lot of other council members as well. And in regards to that, and I wanna be very clear that the capital improvement projects are gonna be folded into the budget process, but are very different. Like, that's a process of its own, right? So like street paving and all that, which is, they're coming through the community very soon. But you'll see that folded into the budget as well. And so making sure that we have services is going to be a priority of mine as well, right? So what that looks like is making sure that if we, there are certain areas where there's a lot of, where we need traffic calming, right? And so like 35th Avenue, where we've seen deaths, right? And also High Street as well. And so making sure that we do invest in some sort of street calming measures with that, with Measure KK funds. And so there's all these different funds, so when you say priority, it really needs to match with those funds as well. And we also have the sugar sweetened beverage tax that we're going to be really talking about. The Sugar Sweetened Beverage Commission is coming forward to the council for their proposal. And so that's a pot of money that we can only spend on, educational healthy programming. And so all of these things are things that I'll be taking into account. And, and really just listening when we do go through the budget process. I will be in the community and along with city staff to host a budget meeting, right? And at this budget meeting, you'll get an opportunity to really voice your concern. And I think I wanna work with the different NCPC to see how do we best go through this, right? Like, should we have people write down what their priorities are and then turn it in as an index card, and then also if they want to, they can walk up and speak, because I know a lot of people don't want to speak, right? And so I just talking about access and making sure that everybody has a voice and it is going to be important. I don't want it to feel like it's just fluff, right? Because a lot of times that is what it is, right? I've done many of these budget meetings, and so, but I really want to hear from you all to really see, which way we're trying to go in regards to the budget. And then when it comes to that process of like taking and trying to add stuff, what is that priority? I want to know from you, what am I fighting for, right? So if we care a lot about the animal shelter, right? Which, and one of my colleagues wants to take the money away from that, I can make sure I say, nope, bring that right back. Maybe you need to go take money somewhere else, but this won't be the pile that you touched, right? So so that's just an example of how we're going to be working together in regards to the budget.
How does all this work with the equity indicators, and how does that frame? Or does it? Again, this is where we get into this hardcore truth telling about what that looks like in terms of these. Because equity, right, is also how do the people or the communities most impacted
Mhm.
by the disparities that are so clear in the city, right? How does that,
Yeah.
how does that work?
Right, and that's just a part of it, right? That's why we have, we vote in representatives who have that at their core value, because it's up to that representative to really like bring it up, right? Because our budget process is not, you guys, on the standard of equity, right? It's just
There it is.
a budget, right?
Just a budget.
It's a budget, right? And you tell us what your priorities are.
So it really is engaged citizens, right?
Right, it
Engaged
is.
communities.
It really is.
More.
Yeah, and even if you feel like your representative is not hearing you in regards to whether it's equity or accessibility or what have you, or the budget doesn't look a certain way, that's when you need to make sure that you're putting pressure on your representative, and, the representative's representing a lot of people, but like you really gotta, at some point, look at what it is that it's gonna be, and it's gonna create the best Oakland that there is. It's no longer my district needs this, right? It's more like, okay, well, this is going to be great for the city as a whole, right? Looking at some trade-offs. Because it's all about trade-offs at the end of the day. We don't have enough money to fund everything.
Saw your hand, yes. And
Yeah, so we met Sheng at the neighborhood meeting about the 5G towers.
Yes.
And congratulations on your election, I was happy to support you.
Yeah.
So let's see, so I noticed that there's active road work taking place on Park Boulevard below the 580. Is the plan for that work to continue on Park above the 580? And is the DOT planning to implement the road diet that they have kind of pushed out? Even though we now know that many people in Paradise died after their main road had been shrunk into one lane. Is the plan still, despite this proof that that is a bad idea, is the plan still to implement that road diet?
Thank you for that question. And so the last I talked to DOT regarding Park Boulevard, that was late last year, and I took a tour as well. And that's it's District 5 and District 4. So below is District 2, actually, around Lake Merritt. And so that construction is happening. There's a lot of pushback from the community in regards to upper 580, and so from what I've been told by DOT is that there's been a halt put on that, but I will double check to make sure that that is the case, and make sure I get paper trail too in regards to that. But yeah, there's been a lot of community pushback in regards to not having a road diet there, and so I'll get an update and let you know.
Yeah, because there was an article in the Tribune of East Bay Times recently where it was a DOT piece where they basically said, we have initiatives and we're moving forward, which to me sounded as though, just get ready and swallow, So we're very concerned about that, and really, really want to know what that's.
Along those lines,
Yes.
what is the data behind this that's suggesting that Park Boulevard is a good place for this road diet?
Right.
I mean, we're talking about, you used the term street quieting, I believe.
Street calming.
Street calming. I don't understand the problem on Park.
Right, so Park Boulevard, because of just mere gravity coming down, right? There's been a lot of cars that have been going actually straight into Corpus Christi's playground, and so it creates safety issues, and especially
in 20 years. 2 in
Yes.
20 years.
And so when you say what's the data, right? That's a question for DOT for sure. They do their research, and they'll say that the data shows that it's road diet, that we need a road diet here. I can tell you that I've met with Director Ryan Russo a few weeks ago, and I told him that in District 4 that he needs to not bring any more road diets in District 4, because I don't. And I will say this to all you, because I told him this, is that you can't convince me that people in the hills are riding their bikes to work and then going back up on bikes. Right, it's not too straightforward. I know, I always have to catch myself, I'm just like, because I'm a really honest person, right? And so that didn't go too well. But as a representative of District 4, like really understanding that, because I live on 35th Avenue, and I know we need some street calming measures, and and having a conversation with Director Russo, I told him that it doesn't look like a road diet to me. It looks like we can do other stuff, whether it's stop signs or even hiring motorcycle officers to come and, you know, cite just the speeders, right? Or what have you, right, as a sting operation. But there has to be something else. And so, so that's where we're at in regards to road diet. And he did tell me that, well, if you, Councilmember, if you ask me to come out to do assessment of 35th Avenue, most likely I'll come back and tell you there needs to be a road diet. So that's where we're at with our conversation in regards to 35th Avenue. I will check on Park Avenue as well. I know that there's a lot of people who oppose the road diet on Park Boulevard above 580, and for good reasons. For me, I'm really concerned that the traffic will go into the neighborhoods, right?
Which we'd love to do a Lambert Boulevard walking tour, because that would be untenable.
Which is where the cyclists are, not on Park, straight on the
Yeah, and so, and that's another thing too. Part of the reason why I ran for city council too is that none of the city council members look like me, Asian American, right? And so I do care a lot about Chinatown too, and that's kind of like what they're doing. And so in regards to downtown specific plan is the Alameda Tunnel. They're kind of like going to do some sort of road diet to kind of change the traffic off of Broadway and have it go through Chinatown. But in the equity, with the equity indicator report, it says that Chinatown is actually the most polluted space, right? And so for that to happen, like I'm not going to sign off anything that has that. And so that's just kind of like where I'm at. If folks are wondering in regards to all of that,
Okay, there was one back there. As a follow-up to that? Okay, because then we'll go you and then one behind you, okay?
So you mentioned DOT, is this a state organization?
I'm sorry. DOT is a Department of Transportation within the city, within City Hall. So it's a city department. It used to all be folded into Public Works, but just about 2 years ago, we created a Department of Transportation just to deal with everything from the sidewalks and the streets. And then everything from the sidewalks and at the edges of the sidewalks and onward is Public Works. Yeah.
Get the question, yes.
Thanks, Sherri. I wanted to first just say thank you for stepping up and entering the election. My whole block is excited by having a new representative and also just the new city council.
Oh yeah. It's a whole new feeling.
It's a whole new day in
Yeah.
Oakland, we hope. So here's my question. There has seemed to be a disconnect between the community and the city council around homelessness and the mayor's office and the administration. And so things that the city council say, oh, that's a great idea, let's do that, like the churches saying people can park in our parking lots. And then 6 months pass, 8 months pass, nothing happens. And so do you see a change, an ability to kind of change some of that? Because if you have something that's an emergency, 6 months is too long. And it seems like that's happening on some crucial issues. And so I'm wondering kind of culturally or in terms of government culture or in terms of the nuts and bolts of how our city works, if you see a way that this new day is actually going to be able to hit the ground and get through that kind of logjam on some issues.
Great. Because we operate off of a strong mayor ideology with that, so the city council, we write all the policy and legislation, and it is up to the mayor's office and the city administration to implement. However, the way that we can keep them accountable is through you all, right? Making sure that we bring these items back up and ask, what is the status of our direction that we gave you 6 months ago? And then have you all come and speak on it and put pressure on the mayor's office too. And I think that we are, it's still gonna be, we're still gonna have to put work and pressure, right, on the administration. However, the city council is way more friendlier to the ideas that were asked last year, including with the interfaith community as well. And so with that being said, I know that there is already a plan in place. There's not a date yet to actually open up these church lots, parking lots finally for RV parking, safe RV parking. And so, yeah, we still really much need the help and the assistance. And when I talk about county funds and state funds, resources, and how does the city council get to have a role in that? That's what I'm talking about, right? I get that the touch sheds is a temporary fix. I don't think that we should get more touch sheds. I think that we really need to invest in running water and, you know, housing folks where there's running water and flushing toilets. And so what that may look like is maybe, you know, we just purchased another SRO, which is a single room occupancy building, the older hotels, right, that are up for sale, that are not occupied, so not displacing anybody. And we can possibly purchase another just like it. And then really partnering with our great nonprofits that we have here, but holding the county accountable, because this is actually what they're supposed to be taking care of, right? Is the homeless crisis. And so, and working with our state legislator to really create, you know, legislation that's more housing friendly. And I know that many of the assembly members and Senator Skinner had just pushed through some of these legislation that's going to make that will help California build more in regards to hoping to curb displacement. But while we're here and we want to keep and capture as many Oaklanders to stay here as much as possible, we have to really be cognizant of what are the solutions for that portion of it too. And so looking at you know, rent protections and also rent assistance, right? So if you're down and out because you had an emergency and you can't pay your rent, there's a program for you. And so that program through the mayor's office, giving credit where it's due, they are working with a partnership with the organization that will help with rent assistance. Yeah, for sure.
Thank you. There's a question right here.
First, just wanted to say thank you. I really appreciate sort of the level of detail and transparency. As somebody who's trying to learn more about how the city works, it's just really great to hear that. So thank you. I wanted to ask about equity in relation to cannabis, which is where I work, the cannabis industry. And you know, it's been 1.5 years since Oakland passed the equity program, which was the first ever sort of attempt to redress some of the harms of the war on drugs as part of you know, this onboarding of the cannabis industry legally. And I know there's a lot of frustration with some people I'm around that although there's many people who have been able to get permits under the equity program, it's unclear if how many of those are going to be successful, that there's a lot of different roadblocks, and it's, you know, there's so many challenges that come with starting a new cannabis business in California. So I guess I was wondering sort of what your vision is for Oakland cannabis in terms of equity, and also, you know, if you have any thoughts about maybe reviewing the equity program to see if it can be more effective in helping folks, you know, get started building generational wealth.
Yeah, for sure. I've been hearing a lot from equity applicants. So I worked a lot on cannabis legislation in the at-large office, and so, you know, and I'm hearing a lot of folks saying, I received a permit as an equity, you know, applicant, and it's crazy that you know, the city gives you a loan, and I think within a month you have to start paying for that loan, right? And so how does that work? And so so these are the nuances, and like, you know, and just basically the sheer consequences of like starting like something, creating something new, right? And so it's about like who's gonna pick that up and really work on it to make sure that these things are addressed. And so I know that not just myself, but other council members are interested in this too. And so including I believe Councilmember McElhaney. And so with that being said, it looks good on paper, and then it's something else in reality on the ground. And so definitely email, and we'll connect. Yeah.
I wanted to just make one. There should be a clipboard going around, and you can sign your name if you're interested in participating in the 22X Neighborhood Council. Just leave your best contact and your name. I haven't seen it in a while, so I just want to make sure it's circulating. Okay, great. And I have a question.
Great.
And maybe it's sort of been asked and answered, but I was thinking about the budget. It sounds like the way you describe it is like there's not enough money for everybody. So it's shifting here and there. And you represent D4, and D4 is one of the wealthiest districts in Oakland, I think. And so how do you balance what your constituents are asking and pushing you for with what's better for all of Oakland, and with distributing funds to areas that need it more than maybe D4 does?
Yeah, for sure. You know, it's, I'm trying to get people out of the framework of like the hills versus the flats, right? And so for me, it's like, it actually, in the survey, everybody, like throughout, no matter which district you're in, everybody has huge concerns around homelessness and housing. That's everybody's number one priority and concern. It's no longer public safety, okay? Public safety has dropped. Good job. Or I don't know, maybe the homelessness and housing, but you're still doing a great job. And so, anyhow, so with that being said, you know, we're all really cognizant of that. And I think if you're in District 4, the vegetation management plan, I mean, people, the anxiety that folks are feeling in the hills, right? And it shouldn't just be in the hills, but everywhere else, you know, like a wildfire is really important. That's why that's my number one priority. And then from that, it's just citywide services. And I think that talks, and then when we talk about citywide services, really putting that equity lens on and how do we create policy around it, because it's just not the budget process, you see. The budget process, also, there's a part of it where there's policy directives that we can actually spell out. So then they're directing the city administration to do certain things with the money, so that we can direct them how to spend the money all at the same time too. Whether it's more thorough, detailed information or what have you. And so really putting those lens on and really asking us, like, you know, like when we talk about services, what is the best way to do that for the whole city? And I think that that's, as a District 4 representative, we really get to help other districts out as well. In regards to the budget, I have, you know, talked to my colleagues on the budget committee and really cognizant of listening, like what is the biggest ask from you? And it might be like fund this rec center, right? And everybody feels like we should extend, you know, use those Measure D dollars and really extend library hours, right? And how that's gonna be implemented. And so making sure that we remember to use those dollars to do just what the voters asked. And I'm really big on using the money that the voters voted for the way that the voters voted for it, okay? So like if it's not for that specific reason, I'm a stickler for not allowing that to happen. And I have to let you know as well that as chair of the rules committee, a lot of times what happens is there's this weird rule where city council members and the city administration can bring in a scheduling request without noticing publicly. They could just bring it to the dais to schedule. And so I just announced to everybody, like, if you do that, your item will not get scheduled, I promise you. And so people have tried that and it's like, yeah, thanks, sorry, you gotta go somewhere else. And so because it's transparency, I mean, we need to notice the public, so then if you have an issue with it, then you can come out and speak on it. So that's not gonna fly with me. And so I'm really about, like, you know, because I know the process already, right? And all of the secret routes that folks take. So then understanding that and really, like, every time, because we're gonna have to come back and ask in the future at some point for more tax dollars, right? And how can we encourage you? How can I, in good faith, ask you to support anything or vote for any of these property taxes if we're not spending the money the right way? And so that's all going to be a part of the budget process too. And you know, and I think that's how a lot of, well, for me per se, making sure that there's equity across the city is talking to my colleagues and hearing what it is that they need in their districts, because as the representative of that district, I lean on them to tell me what it is that district needs, right? And so I'm already hearing a lot in regards to illegal dumping in East Oakland, right? What are we gonna do with that? And so then maybe that includes investing money into another illegal dumping crew, right? And so those are kind of the things that I'll be looking at for sure.
I wanted to at least ask a few questions that the brave souls in the parking lot, and then I see there's someone in the back who hasn't asked a question. So I'll just do these, then we'll jump back to you, okay? So what will you do to avoid evicting homeless camps in 40-degree weather/rain, Lakeside Park last week? I think it's a two-parter. And then would you support repeal of Oakland's ordinances against loitering, sleeping, begging? So sort of again speaking to this larger issue.
Right.
And what is possible, you know, and how we might be able again to partner.
Yeah, for sure. I know that this is a really big concern of all the council members, but we're really myself, Councilmember Bass, and Councilmember Kaplan are really asking and learning from the city administration, well, mostly Councilmember Bass and I, really learning from the city attorney and the city administration what's actually happening, right? Because, and then not just that, but going out to sites where they're given 3-day notice, and then they come and do, what is it, they call it a clean and clear, and understanding that perspective, and then working with the HOG as well to understand how that's working out. And so we've had meetings with advocates within the homeless community to really try to understand what's happening on the ground, and what's the partnership like with the city administration, because at the end of the day, it's going to be through the city administration, right? So once we figure out what's actually happening and how we can make things better, is where we're gonna come into our resolution to have direction. And then once again, that's going to be the administration that would implement, right? And so then holding them accountable for that too, is going to be really big. And so this is not a small issue, it's a really big issue. And you know, we're working on the inside effectively as possible, but also in partnership, right? Because you don't want to go in there and then just say, well, you're all doing it wrong. We don't know, you can't do that. You have to go in and say, okay, what is it that you're doing? How can I be of service, right? What are some new ideas that we can build around this? Because it's not like no one's doing anything. I get that there's this clear and like where are people being placed, right? If there's anywhere, but the numbers are not adding up right now, is what I can tell you guys, right? Like,
what do you mean by that?
Say for instance, if folks are reporting, if city staff's reporting to us that there's 20 people on around Lake Merritt, and then you go out and you do your own self-assessment, like a really generic way of doing it, you find that there's more like 80 people. And so, and then there's only, when you ask city staff, well, how many beds are there available, right? And they said, well, we have enough for like 30, not all 40 will actually take us up on our offer, but then you count 80 people, that becomes a huge difference, right? So then I really understand, like, how did you get the number 20 versus the 80 number that we've counted just by walking around? And so, so that becomes a really big issue. And we're trying to work together as much as possible, because that's how you get things done. Is if everybody feels respected and everybody's working together to really like get things done. And so that's where we're at right now. Before any other like sudden like right.
So some part of it is to just staying the course, and it's our right. It's engaged communities.
Right.
It's important to keep asking the question, right, so that that keeps being centered in the conversation.
Oh yeah, you keep asking the question, but not just that, but you hold everybody accountable by having your like bi-weekly meetings for a status update, right? And so you have it already on the calendar, and so you know when you're going to meet next, and so there's an accountability of like, okay, well in 2 weeks there needs to be some results, right? Or some reporting back. Okay. And so from that, when you're working together in that form, then everybody can land together. Yeah. Instead of like landing in different spaces and places, and then there's a fight at council, and so, and that never works out well. And so then that's why we're like being patient as well, because we want to make sure that everybody's moving together. It's a whole new council, so then you can't expect for you know, city staff as well, right, the administration, to just be on board with like, well, you should have been doing this, right? Well, they weren't being directed just, you know, a few months ago to do that. And so really be respectful of that too. Yeah, because I love our staffers. I mean, city staff, the people that work for the city, they just have so much heart, so much drive. And you know, and we really need to respect that. And so
thank you. Yeah. I wanted to go back to
Oh yeah. Hi Sheng.
Hi.
Joseph Dashiel, and I too met you at the cell tower meeting.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh gosh, a couple months ago. I have a question about the cell tower issue. We, a group of people, a group of neighbors in the Oakmore district have been very concerned about Verizon's plans to install mini cell units throughout Oakmore and beyond. And I know that AT&T has installed them in different parts of the city. In fact, Verizon has some cell towers in other neighborhoods. but there's a real concern about the actual, well, the health issues around these mini cell towers being installed near homes,
Right.
but also the bulk that companies do. So, we really didn't get a chance to talk, but I just wanted to raise that issue with you. There was, the planning commission approved the installation of a mini cell unit up at 4700 Lincoln recently.
Okay.
And, the group of neighbors I'm referring to raised enough money to appeal it. So I believe that, appeal and the actual cell issue is going, that particular cell location is going to come before the city council. But that aside, I just wanted to get your, just your meaning or your feeling, your opinion on the mini cell tower units that are being planned for District 4.
Yeah, great question. So what I'm gonna tell you is that it all goes to the planning commission, which they have full authority over, you know, voting up or down on that. And if it's voted yes through the planning commission, then it gets a green light. The city council does not get involved in that because we are the appeals portion of it. And so if it does get appealed, then it comes to us and we take a neutral look at it. Not a great answer, right?
What does that mean, take a neutral look at it?
Right, so we can't be biased at the offset, right? And so if I'm telling you like, oh, I love cell towers, this is me being biased, right? Like potentially that's me being biased for future decision making on the city council. And so, so as you just said, there's an appealed cell tower come to the city council. And so once we receive that, we will take a clear look at it without having any knowledge of that or having any prep work, so that we can be very neutral and take a stance on that. Because the planning commission do have full authority over approving and denying all cell towers or the cell towers that are going up.
So, there's actually more questions, but we have to now begin to wrap it up to, because we have some other things to take care of, but I wanted to actually just frame that in, these are questions that both the NC will get, and then we'll make sure they come to you.
Okay.
In addition to all the other questions that potentially are in the room that haven't been asked. Also want to say that that's just a demonstration of how eager this community is to partner with you, right? So take that with you. There's a lot of talk about sustaining the dialogue. So I think this is a really promising moment. Thank you for coming. And I'm going to hand it back to Shakira.
Thank you all so very much. Really appreciate it.